Hello, everyone, and welcome to Herosner Podcast Season 2, Episode 13, live on YouTube. It's Thursday, April 14th, 2022. Happy Thursday to everyone. I'm your host, Gevork Nazarian, and as always, I'm joined by my multi-talented co-host, Mr. Mike Battalion, where we discuss our great Armenian history covering different people, eras, and topics. We hope you're all having a wonderful day, and thank you for taking the time to join us on our little podcast live again on YouTube. How are you, buddy?
Great. We're almost through the week.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was a great show last week, huh?
Yeah, it was. It really was.
Yeah. I hope you guys...
Harach is full of amazing stories.
Yeah. I hope you guys joined us live last week and enjoyed the show. And we got to showcase and premiere our fourth sculpture, which is Komitas, and it is on order right now. You can go ahead and order it. So visit us on herosner.com. Place your order. It is a limited amount for now because, as we mentioned, production takes a long time. So make sure you go ahead and order it. And we do have another announcement today. Later on after the show, we'll announce another one. So our main topic today is the life of Andranik Ozanian, also known by the Armenians all around the world as Andranik Pasha. Andranik was an Armenian military commander, a general actually, a statesman, and a key figure in the Armenian national liberation movement.
Dude is a hero.
He is.
Yeah.
There's books written about him that people should read and learn about his life. But since we don't know much about his life,
we do know somebody that does.
Yeah, and for that reason, we asked no one other than historian Mr. Gevork Nazarian to join us as a special guest to talk to us about Andranik's life from his earliest years to being part of the Fedai and key role that he played with the independence of Armenia. So without any further ado, let's bring Gevork Nazarian, who's joining us live from Yerevan. Hello, Gevork.
Hi, Gevork.
Hello, guys. How are you?
We're
How
doing
are you,
great.
Dave and Mike? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
Great to be with you guys once again.
Don't join. It's his third time back on the show.
Yeah,
third time's a charm.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a race between him and Vahan.
Yeah.
and the Wise Nuts boys.
Yeah. Well, they're tied now.
Yes.
Vahan and Gevork are tied now. So let's see who's gonna win. Next one, I want both of you on. So we got to work something out.
That would be fun.
I know you've mentioned that you might be coming to the States, right?
Right. Yes,
Okay.
I will. I don't know when, but in the near future, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Gevork, before we jump into the topic, I want to ask you something. A lot of people ask us, what does Gevork actually do in Armenia? They know you're a historian. Can you clarify it? So
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm working on several projects, which is basically, again, like I think we talked about this. We have a lot of books in Armenian on Armenian history that need to be translated and published and presented, to the general world audience, not only to the Armenians, because it's kind of Vic, it's kind of like we're preaching to our own choir, so to speak, a lot of the time. So, there has been a lot of great research that needs to be properly also presented. So, I'm doing my humble part in that regard. You guys probably know I already did a lot with our great late Dr. Artak Movsisyan, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. But there, his colleagues and my friends, they kind of picked up the torch. So I'm working with them in having these materials presented to the world at large, so to speak. Now,
can people access that information? Is it?
Yes, of course. Be it through the books and through the videos that we already have put out. I did mention the books the last time that we did. Those are just 2 books, but we actually did some others. And just as importantly, we did a lot of films on Armenian history. Like, for example, the history of Yerevan. which was done by, again, late Dr. Artak Movsisyan. The English version, I translated that. And a lot of the films that, Artak did, I actually translated those. And they're actually available online. If anyone is interested, they can actually just go online, go on YouTube, and just punch in Artak Movsisyan, and those videos will come up. There are a lot.
Okay.
We also did one on falsification of our Armenian history by the Azeris, which is very important because, unfortunately, it has a political connotation. And we did that as well, falsifiers of history, Azerbaijan. Just if anyone can search, it will come up, how they falsify Armenian history and their own as well, because they claim so many things that I think we talked about a little bit about that in the Artsakh episode that we did. So yeah, I guess there's a lot of work to be done, and thank you for doing your part as well. We're kind of collaborating as well. So I guess some of the materials that I'm providing to you guys, it's kind of partly my research and partly research of the colleagues that I'm working with.
Well, it's no secret. It's no secret. We've announced it. We are not the ones. All this research is from you and your colleagues, and we're thankful for you to provide this. And we try to put it together as best as possible to present it to our audience in a way where, and we've discussed this off air, where it's not this serious, somber, thing. We want it to be two dudes talking about history and for it to sound natural and to learn. Not everything has to be taken seriously. There are things that happen in life that you can make jokes about, laugh about it, and when they're serious, you can be serious. But I think that's why we've had such a good response from our audience, is because they enjoy listening to the way we are conversing about this stuff.
It's a lot of amazing factual information. I mean, it's also a learning process for us too, which I'm incredibly thankful for, because I'm somewhat
absolutely. You guys are doing an amazing job. I mean, I'm honest. I just love listening to you guys. I mean, absolutely.
Thanks, Gevork.
Thank you, Gevork, John. Well, again, we're appreciative for everything you're doing with us. Now, what I want to do is, and I just got a text message on a live show.
I told you to turn your phone off.
My phone
Rule number 1, turn all devices off.
It's all right. It's the wife. I always, you cannot ignore the wife. So,
no, don't do that.
No, so, let's get into our topic. So today we wanted to talk about, and because it's April, and April 24th is
right around the corner.
Right around the corner for the, I don't call it an anniversary. It's just a remembrance of the Armenian Genocide, which took place in 1915. And last week we talked, about the orphan carpet with Haraj. So this month we wanted to talk about, the theme is the Armenian Genocide. So, because Andranik was kind of involved in the revolution, or
huge key figure
in that era, so we wanted to talk about him. So again, today we're going to be discussing the life of Andranik Ozanian, and we have some questions prepared. So
some topics.
So are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, take it away.
Gevork. So since we're covering Andranik's life, more in his later years as a fidai and a general, can you speak a little bit about his early life? Let's start from there.
Absolutely. Right. You made a great point. First of all, just to start off, he is what you can say an icon of the 19th century and early 20th century Armenian national liberation struggle. So Andranik is kind of like an icon of all those revolutionaries, those fidais that fought for Armenian liberty and freedom. So in that regard, Andranik is this icon of the Armenian struggle for freedom and independence. For Andranik, obviously, he was born in Shabin Karahisar, which is in Western Armenia, historically Lesser Armenia, territory of Lesser Armenia, in 1865, on February 25th, 1865. That's when our great hero was born. And, this is exactly the time when, just as a lot of eventful things were to unfold. And Andranik was born just around that time. So he actually, another personal tragedy of his was the loss of his mother at a very young age. So Andranik was just 1 year old when he lost his mother, and his sister Nazeli actually was the one that actually reared him. So she kind of basically served as a mother figure to him, his own sister Nazeli. And then he just was from very humble origins. He worked at his father's carpentry shop as a carpenter. He learned the craft from his father, and he continued the craft. And he actually also received education in the local Armenian Musherian school. So he went to the local Armenian school until 1875, and then his basically and continued working in his dad's shop in the carpentry shop. But as I said, during this time, a lot of eventful things were happening. Abdul Hamid II came to power during this time in 1876. Then the Russo-Turkish War took place, and during the war, unfortunately, Western Armenia was again theater of war for some of the major battles. And unfortunately, these irregulars, they would attack Armenian villages throughout Western Armenia and kill Armenia. So before or after engaging the Russians, they would often just attack Armenian villages. And this basically, Andranik was at this time around 13 years old.
Yeah.
So this was the backdrop which led to some of the activities that Andranik would actually get engaged into. He saw Armenians obviously in his own native Shabin Garahisar get killed. He saw a lot of these persecution by these Turkish soldiers and a lot of irregulars, because oftentimes a lot of the killing was done by the irregular forces. So this is the background that Andranik was witness to, and this is what shaped him as a revolutionary, as a freedom fighter. And he just basically soon after he started his revolutionary activities. One of the gendarmes, actually, he saw a gendarme, which is like a military police, it's kind of like a paramilitary Turkish guard, attack a local Armenian, and he actually came to the rescue, and he assaulted that guard, and he was actually imprisoned. So Andranik was actually imprisoned for that assault, at a very young age. He was 17 years old? I think that happened in 1882. So he was actually imprisoned, but then he escaped. He actually did some time, but did escape from that prison, and he actually couldn't stay any longer his native Shabin Garahisar. So he actually fled to Constantinople, and for a few years he actually worked in Constantinople as a carpenter, because he had to support himself.
Had to survive.
And that's the craft. Yeah, and that's the craft that he actually knew as a carpenter, and he returned to his native. A few years later, he returned to his native Sebastia. He actually also married at that young age, and but unfortunately at 17. But his wife, during childbirth, she actually died. He also lost his son during childbirth, infant son. So that was like a personal tragedy to him.
Wow.
His young wife, he just lost her. And you guys probably know, medicine and childbirth back then was painful and very dangerous. Even the thing we didn't, they didn't have the modern medicine that we fortunately have today.
Yeah.
So a lot of infections and things like that led to death during childbirth.
Yeah.
But Andranik found the strength to actually resist. And then he continued with his revolutionary activities, but he wasn't like he was still not as involved in the liberation struggle. As I said, he worked mostly as a carpenter. And then you can say like fully fledged revolutionary is 1888, when he again returned to Sebastia and then his native province, and then engaged in these revolutionary activities, joined up with the Fidais.
That's actually going to be my next question for you. But before I ask the question, I mean, what he went through as a child, losing his mother, his sister, so many things happening as, you think about it, when you have children, especially like if I were to look at my son, for example, like the things he would to go through at that age, at a young age, and then, being in prison and so much to be able to resist that and come out on top at the end, that just says a lot.
Well, it sounds like, again, I'm not trying to paint a different picture of him or any individual, but it sounds like at some point you get to a point in your life where you don't have much else to lose. And you have one cause, and that's it. And they always say the most dangerous man is a man who has nothing to lose.
That's true. That's true.
You know what I mean?
That's true. Well, you mentioned the national liberation as that struggle was taking place in Armenia. How did he join the movement? What was his motivation, and how he kind of, became part of that struggle and movement?
Right. Well, as I said, basically his main motivation was the events that unfolded, especially after 1878, after the Russo-Turkish War, when these irregulars would attack and kill Armenians. So that was the backdrop. He had already, as I said, for some years, an active revolutionary, but you can say after 1888 is when he really became a full-fledged Fidai, and he actually joined a lot of the groups. And what is interesting, Vic, is that he actually was not, he only joined a revolutionary political Armenian party, the Social Democratic Hunchak Party, in 1891. So he was already a Fidai, fighting as a guerrilla fighter for Armenian freedom before that, as early as 1888.
Okay.
In this armed struggle. But in 1891, he joined more of an organized political party, which was the Hunchakian Party. And then, he continued already as in within that organization, again, fighting for the same goals as other Armenian revolutionary organizations were also engaged in. But then one of the main things that he was involved as within that organization was the assassination of the police chief of Constantinople, Yusuf Mehmet, who actually was responsible for a lot of the persecution of Armenians. So, and again, he was arrested for that, for his part in the plot, in the assassination. So he was again imprisoned, and he again escaped in 1892, the same year that he actually, of the assassination. And then after that, a little bit later, he joined another revolutionary organization, relatively more younger one, which was the Armenian Revolutionary Federation, the ARF. So in 1892, he joined that organization. And then, he continued his revolutionary activities as part of that organization. And then basically just around that time, or he was an active fidai. Then a major event that happened was the Hamidian massacres, because Abdul Hamid, in order to squash this desire of Armenians for freedom, he basically carried out these Hamidian massacres. And why I want to make this point clear, that basically the Armenians back then, sometimes the Turks would say, all the Armenians wanted, they were rebels, fighting for, to carve out an independent state within, Western Armenia. But in reality, that's not true. The Armenians were simply asking for the reforms in Western Armenia that were promised by the Treaty of Berlin. So I talked a little bit about the Russo-Turkish War, but I didn't talk about the fact that after that, the great powers of Europe, which were, several countries like Great Britain, Russia, France, and others, they basically met in Berlin, and they, actually in Article 61 of the Treaty of Berlin, they actually imposed upon Sultan to carry out reforms in the 6 Armenian provinces. And by the 6 Armenian provinces, we mean the provinces of Western Armenia. Okay. Armenian populated provinces of Western Armenia. And, Sultan agreed to that. He actually signed it. He signed that document, but he never carried out these reforms. And those reforms, basically, to put it like in a nutshell, were, the persecution, the killings, the pillaging of the Armenians by these, Turks, irregular, Kurdish forces, and others should stop. Basically, it was for in defense of the rights of a minority, a Christian minority, in this case, the Armenians, on their native soil by these, as I said, irregulars, and Turkish even troops who would just regularly, they could just, kill an Armenian and basically get away with it. They would go to court, and the local, in local court, the judge would be the local, mufti or another religious Islamic official. He would just, pardon him, and he would not serve any. Can you imagine? So basically, Andranik and all our fidais, first and foremost, they fought for the rights, for human dignity. They fought for human rights, for the rights of the Armenian people who lived on their own soil within the Ottoman Empire in Western Armenia, to respect their rights. So it's a very important point. So basically, Andranik, as a fidai, he always demanded that the Turkish officials should respect, starting with the Sultan, they should respect his rights. And in 1893, he actually published a manifesto saying, Sultan Abdul Hamid II, you have to honor this. You have to honor the reforms of these Armenians. But, Abdul Hamid II answered this call in a fashion that was typical to him, and that's why he became known as the Red or Bloody Sultan. He, he set up these forces of Kurdish irregulars known as Hamidiye, which were named after him. He set up these death squads basically to attack the Armenians and kill them, and basically in quote-unquote punishing fashion, to basically put down this desire for the native Armenians to have their rights respected by the Sultan.
Now, you mentioning this, and we've seen this again, not to get into current day issues, geopolitical issues, but you're saying they would hire or use at their disposal death squads that weren't necessarily Turkish military
mercenaries,
right? The mercenaries. Now, do you think, we know that today, but do you think this was a way for them to circumvent certain wartime treaties or certain type of international code or whatnot that they couldn't violate based off of their personal military? You know what I mean? Where they're using outside help to go through with their agenda, which doesn't apply to certain treaties. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Is this
That's a good point. You're
Yeah.
making a great point. With the irregular army, you
Exactly.
can do a lot more.
Yes.
Which is, it's not, obviously, well, back then there were some convention, but the Geneva Convention and things like that were just happening. The international law was just developing, Mike. So although you're making a great point, not only in terms of, they could do things outside of international law, but you're absolutely like, even within national law, they could do a lot.
Really?
And then, the Sultan would say, oh, wait, those forces are not, government forces. I don't, although they were, because they were even named after him. They were, they were authorized by him. But a lot of the time, you're absolutely right. He would even say, like, the killing that was done
Was not us.
That wasn't done by government affiliated, Kurdish elements.
Washing their hands, basically.
Yeah, that was like, it was done by rogue elements. I can't do anything. So you made a great point, actually. Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the reasons.
Again, not to go into current day politics, but or anything that recently happened, especially with the 45-day war. We know that they were employing mercenaries. The Azeris were,
right?
Yeah.
Which in essence somewhat circumvents international law, wartime law, from war crimes being applied to atrocities that they're going to commit.
Yeah, it's a loophole.
Yeah, absolutely, it's a loophole.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up some pictures as we're talking, earlier pictures of Andranik.
Let me just point out, this is Andranik. I believe this photo was taken around 1904 during the Sassoon resistance. He's the leader of the Sassoon resistance of 1904, and banner on the back, is very famous. Famous banner, which was a revolutionary banner that actually Andranik used. Ամենայն տեղ մահը մի է, մարդ մի անգամ պիտ մեռնի, բայց Երանի յուր ազգի ազատության համար կմեռնի. Those are the words of great revolutionary Mikhail Nalbandian that are inscribed, emblazoned on the banner.
On the banner, yeah.
That's a cool statue piece. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Maybe in the future. This, I don't know if this picture, I think this is more in the later years, as far as him on, it's a famous picture of him on the horse. So, but let's see here. Gevork, are you?
Yes, I'm listening. I'm listening as you.
Okay. Let's see. I have another picture from here. I think this is, can you talk about a little bit about this picture where this, I don't know if we're jumping way ahead.
No, it's fine. Okay. Here, actually, Andranik is when, we'll cover this as well.
Okay, we'll bring you back on. Okay.
This is, this is, I'll go ahead and say it. Andranik is here as the leader of the First Balkan Armenian Battalion, which served during World War I on the Western Armenia front. So he's here with his, Fidais and the volunteers as the leader of the First Armenian Volunteer Battalion.
Yeah. I think we're having some technical. Can you hear us?
Everything is okay. Vic. So here in this photo, we see Andranik as the leader of the First Armenian Volunteer Battalion, which was Armenian formation fighting on the Western Armenia front. This is around 1915. He actually he led it from 1914, but this photo is probably around 1915 with his loyal, Fidais. We see Makhluto here, Fidai Makhluto, Fidai Sepu, and others. So this is like a photo with his loyal
we'll talk about this.
Cool. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Mike, question.
So when we know that a lot of these revolutionaries or whoever, anytime you want to set something up, you typically have a home base, somewhere where you're operating out of, right? Especially during a lot of this turbulent times, obviously throughout his life. Now he becomes a revolutionary. We know that he was operating out of the western part of Armenia, right? Specifically in Sassoon. what's the significance of Sassoon, and what were they doing out of Sassoon that was so important for it to be in Sassoon?
Right. Well, no, great question, Mike. Sassoon basically was this mountainous nucleus Armenian area, and then which basically served as a base for a lot of these, freedom fighters, Armenian freedom fighters, the Fidais. And then, as I said, as early as 1894 and 1896, when the Hamidian massacres were taking place, when Abdul Hamid II attacked the Armenians, Andranik already made Sassoon his base. And a lot of the Sassoonci Armenians would actually support him. So not only were there Armenian revolutionaries, defending against these, attacks by the Hamidiye and other, death squads, but also local Sassooncis would also take up arms. And Sassooncis, throughout Armenian history have been known as this, warlike, freedom-loving, Armenians. So they were also like a symbol of Armenian resistance. Symbol, we have the great epic, the Daredevils of Sassoon, Sassoonci David and others. So Sassoon was one of these, just like, for example, Zeytun was another such symbol of Armenian resistance. So was also the Sassoon. So Andranik made it his base, and then, in Sassoon from 1894-96, he defended with the local Sassooncis, the Armenians there, and then he stayed basically there, and he was a beloved leader of the Sassooncis. But not only in Sassoon, he was actually operating in the Mush, which is more a plain valleys adjoining Sassoon. So he was very active in the Mush, Sassoon, this area, but a permanent base he established in mountains of Sassoon.
Mm-hmm.
So Sassoon was this important stronghold, Armenia's stronghold in many ways, geographically, in terms of the populace there, who were also, as I said, supporting him very actively. But unfortunately, Mike, after 1896, he had to leave Sassoon for a brief while because of the Hamidian massacres. And in 1897, after the massacres, he actually, General Andranik at this time, he left Sassoon, and then he went to Iran, in northern Iran, and actually tried to, foster support there for the liberation cause of Western Armenia, for defending Western Armenia. And then he actually returned in 1899. He returned to Sassoon, and at this time, the great leader of Sassoon resistance, Sassoon, Fidai leader was Akhpur Serop. So he joined his sort of squad, and then unfortunately, Akhpur Serop that same year was actually killed by a Kurdish chieftain who was actually, carrying out an order by Abdul Hamid II. So in 1899, Akhpur Serop was killed, and then Andranik became the leader of the resistance. He became the leader of, the Fidais operating in this area, in Sassoon Mush area. And then he actually avenged the death of Akhpur Serop by killing Bashar Khalil. That was the name of this Kurdish chieftain who actually, killed Akhpur Serop on behest of Abdul Hamid II.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to point out that, not all Kurds were against the Armenians. Most of the Kurds that were hostile and fighting the Armenians, they were basically bribed and on the payroll of the Sultan.
Yeah.
There were a lot of allied Kurdish tribes that actually, were very much on the side of the Armenians, supporting Armenians, even supporting someone like Andranik or Akhpur Serop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there, even today, for a lot of these Kurds, these Armenian revolutionaries are also they're heroes as well, because oftentimes they would also even defend the Kurds, the innocent Kurds as well. They were like revolutionary freedom fighters. They weren't killing off innocent people. So this is an important point that I think we should also have to make.
Well, yeah, with the Kurds, I mean, as long as we can remember, over the last 150 to 200 years, they've had their qualms against the Turks and Ottomans settling in that area, and Pastoren Tegahanen Areidans, you know what I mean? So they had the same issues somewhat.
Yeah, and we talked about a bit about the situation
even to this day
with Umid Kurt on the Antip episode, you know, and he mentioned that not all the Kurds were just, you know, anti-Armenian.
No, I mean,
because they lived together, they shared lives together.
If you really think about it, even today, it's still the same issue, right, on the Syrian border.
Yeah,
you know, they're having the same issues with the Turks.
Yeah. I want to thank everyone who's joining us live, to the audience. Thank you for being here. We're having a conversation about the life of Andranik Ozanian, the great general, and our special guest is Gevork Nazarian, and who is giving us all the knowledge about his life. The next question, and we've talked about this in past episodes, that has involved the First Balkan War, which took place from 1912 to 1913, if I'm not mistaken, where the Balkan states joined forces to fight the Ottoman Empire. Andranik chose to fight in this war on the side of Bulgaria. Can you tell us a bit about why he did this?
Sure. That's a great question, Vic. I just want to cover a little bit from earlier period, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay,
That's right.
thank you. So basically, Andranik, when I said like 1899, then earlier in 1901, there was a major, again, battle in this time in Mush. So basically, he descended from his Mush stronghold to the Holy Apostles Church in Mush with 50 fidais, and he actually held out against more than 1,000 regular Turkish troops and other thousands of irregular Kurdish troops, you know, Hamidiye affiliate. So in 1901, he actually made the Mush Holy Apostles Church his stronghold and held off there in 1901. So that added to Andranik's fame. So the Andranik as sort of like a hero and legend that we actually came to know after that actually developed more after his resistance in Mush, when he just basically resisted with 50 men against, you know, more than 1,000, 2,000 troops, Turkish and Kurdish irregular troops. And he actually was able to sneak out of the monastery wearing a Turkish officer's uniform, and nobody actually knew that, you know, it's Andranik. He was even able to sneak out some of his fighters from the Mush. So this was a very important episode. It's also an important episode in this period, the national liberation struggle, the Mush Holy Apostles battle. And basically he continued basically to have the Sassoon stronghold. Then in 1904, we actually saw a photo of him during this Sassoon resistance. Basically, Abdul Hamid decided, I'm going to wipe out all of the Sassoonis. So there were in January of 1904, thousands and thousands of Turkish and irregular Kurdish troops attacked Sassoon to basically kill Andranik, kill the Fidais there, and he even said, I'm going to just wipe out this whole region, kill the Armenians there. And then for about half a year, a little bit less of a half a year, until May of 1904, there was a heroic resistance of only about 200 Fidais with Andranik and other Fidais. And then about 1,000 also Sassoonsis took up arms. But obviously, they fought against an enemy overwhelmingly in numbers, and they couldn't, hold out. And then there was a massacre. About 10,000 Armenians, 10,000 Sassoonsis were unfortunately massacred. Thousands were driven away, and Andranik was, he retreated with these Sassoonsis into, again, Iran, neighboring Iran. So they crossed from Sassoon eastward, and then thousands of Sassoonsis with him left the region. And then Andranik, for a few years, he was outside of, Sassoon and Western Armenia in general. He basically was, first in Iran. Then he went for some time. He lived for a few years, I think, after 1905 in Tiflis, 1906. And then he traveled to Europe, and he again tried to, plead the cause of Armenians. He's a lot of these countries, Belgium, France, Great Britain. He traveled to all these countries, met with the local leaders, met with the Armenian communities there, and he basically tried to raise funds for the defense of Armenians. Tried to also point out that the Armenians were being massacred already. So this is before the genocide. Armenians were constantly being killed. Yeah. Genocide was just an accumulation, of this extermination policy.
Yeah. That's one thing that we've mentioned. Like, a lot of people think that it was like just a genocide
in one day.
Yeah, in one day. It's like so much was happening before that in some of them smaller scales, some of them large scales, but it was happening. Yeah, like we were a constant target to basically be erased from the face of the world, pretty much, by the Turks.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, Vic. Like I said, even in the Hamidian massacre, some 300,000 Armenians died. A lesser massacre that unfortunately is not talked about much, like the Sassoon. Yeah. The Sassoon massacre, after the they attacked Sassoon, some around 10,000 Armenians were killed. In Adana in 1909, in Cilicia, some 30 to 40,000 Armenians were killed. I mean, and every time, Vic, it's like basically a lot of Armenians were killed. A lot of Armenians were driven away from their homeland. Yeah. So that's another loss, right? Yeah. Many just left to different lands and then eventually assimilated. And a lot of Armenians were actually forcibly converted to Islam. Mm-hmm. So they would say, if you want to live, you have to right now. You have to convert to Islam, or I'm going to kill you. Yeah, here and now. Yeah. So imagine a lot of thousands, tens of thousands of Armenians were killed every time. Yep. Many were driven away from their land, and we have even, for example, like Armenians in the United States at the end of 19th century. A lot of those Armenians that settled in the United States, well, many have already assimilated. They're not part of the Armenian community. Yep. That was again lost, unfortunately, for the Armenian nation, and then also those Armenians that stayed behind, a lot of them were forcibly converted to Islam. Yeah. So as you can see, the numbers of Armenians just constantly shrank. Yeah. The number of Turks and Kurds would grow, and the Armenians, the native Armenian population, would shrink. So you can imagine what the frustration that Andranik and some of these Armenians faced, that, seeing what was happening to their homeland, in front of their eyes.
That's the thing. When we've talked about this before, as far as if there's actually YouTube videos of Turks doing DNA tests and finding out that they're Armenian. There's a lot of them out there.
There were some social media posts. They weren't too happy about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
they say it's like over millions of them that are Armenian that have no idea that they are.
I would make the bold claim, Vic, that the majority of Turks have, certain Armenian DNA, at least partially. Yeah. And the reason I say this, because this process began as early as even at the time of the Seljuks, in the 11th century, as soon as the first, Turkic, Seljuk, later Turkish, but at that time Seljuk waves came, this conversion, this forced assimilation process began and just intensified during the time of the Ottomans. Yeah. And you even have for example, many famous, I know it's kind of off topic, but it's kind of related, so we can talk a little bit about this. Like, you have famous Turkish, quote unquote, architect, the greatest of mosque builder. His name is Sinan, but he actually he hailed from a family, 16th century we're talking about, from an Armenian family of converts that converted to Islam in Caesarea, in Lesser Armenia, in Majak. So it's this is just one example. I mean, in this process, it was way before the 19th century, before the Hamidian massacres, before the genocide, of this constant conversion of the native population to, Islam and this Turkification. Because when they converted to Islam, as soon as they converted to Islam, they were already regarded as Turks.
Yeah.
Because according to Ottoman laws, there weren't nationalities. It was like all Muslims were considered, a one community, and then Armenians as a Christian community were a separate Armenian Christian community. But all Muslims were considered, as one community,
When
later on,
the Ottoman Empire was officially like kind of established in that region, what, in the 15th century?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, the Ottoman Empire, it began as in the 13th century, but it 13th century as a small sort of like an offshoot of the Seljuk Sultanate earlier. They sort of basically like an offshoot.
What I'm talking about as far as taking over the whole region.
Yeah. But its rise is definitely in the 15th century, especially as even before that, it was already powerful. But when they took over Constantinople in 1453, and then, it's basically when you can say that, and it continued to expand afterwards. They took over the Balkans.
Yeah.
My point was, they reached Vienna, as far as Vienna in 1673, if I'm not mistaken. And then at the gates of Vienna, only in Austria. Yeah.
The reason I bring this up is to when we're talking about how early it started, the conversion. You're talking about 14th, 15th century that Armenians were living there, and it started from there. And imagine for how many years, 400 or 500 years, Armenians kept resisting this pressure from them.
Well, they also have one of the most outstanding architectural influences is in Venice. Right on the shores. I forget what the building is called, but that was a major Ottoman hub, the city of Venice in northern Italy. So imagine where their outreach went.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They were going westward.
Yeah.
Throughout Europe.
Oh, definitely. Well, as I said, Mike, they were stopped at the gates of Vienna. Literally, there was a major battle. Combined Polish, Austrian, and other many like European forces joined, and they were basically, we're talking late 17th century is when their expansion finally kind of was checked. Yeah. So before that, they were just expanding and expanding.
One thing I want to mention, sorry, Gevork John, is when we talk about these massacres, these numbers that we mention have become so numb to people. When we mention 300,000, 10,000, 20,000, people cannot comprehend the size. And I always tell people, close your eyes and imagine 300,000 bodies piled up for you to realize what number that is. Even 10,000, even 100 people. And when we talk about these genocides that happened, massacres happened, it's unbelievable. 300,000 people disappearing like this? Are you kidding me?
It's a difficult number to comprehend. If
that's what I'm saying. But they need to comprehend it.
Of course.
To understand what we went through.
Of course.
What our culture went through.
Look, I mean, if you ever asked anybody to count to 1,000, that's a difficult task. But so think about it. Like, how is any of us going to comprehend 300,000, a million, whatever the case is? It's a difficult number to comprehend.
It
is. I completely agree with what you're saying. Also, a little side note. I don't know, Gev, you might know about this, but the I don't know if you would call it a myth or the tale of, modern day Dracula, which came from Vlad the Impaler, right, in Romania.
Yes.
Yeah, that whole story that whole story. Well, I don't want to call it a story. Was him impaling heads of Ottomans on pikes.
Really?
Yes.
Absolutely. No. You're absolutely right. He was in Transylvania. He was a lord there. Yeah. And he actually, Vlad Dracula, he is actually a real historic figure.
Yeah, Vlad
then
the
he
Impaler.
was like in the 19th and 20th century, these different, Bram Stoker and others, they made him out in this,
Turned it
vampire.
into a myth,
But he's an actual historic figure who would actually impale his enemy, the Ottomans, on this, sticks. And then,
I did not know this.
He was actually called Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah.
Because he would impale these, Ottoman soldiers to basically to scare off,
the Ottoman horde.
Yeah.
Oh,
well.
So absolutely.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. That's a great point, Mike. And then
Let's
just
bring it
wanna
back.
make-
Let's bring
Yeah.
it
We
back.
need more
Just the
Vlad the
last-
Impalers.
Yeah, just the last point on our loss, that you're absolutely right, Vic, that, if Armenians would not be massacred so much and continue to live on their soil without being killed or forcibly converted or driven away from their land to these different lands, we would be today like in tens of millions. I mean, Armenians would at least be 40, 50 million, if not more.
Yeah.
And to those that doubt, just look at the population of Turkey today. Basically, like Turkey is what, like 80 million, right?
Yeah, just about 80
so
million.
there you go. It's like those are the converted and sort of
Yeah.
forcibly Islamified descendants of those folks.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
think about the United States. I know I always bring this up. 360 million people. We're not 360 million Americans.
No. Well,
We're
in the
not.
United States, there's
We're
no
not.
American. I'm sorry, there's no such thing.
So, it's
But
the
his
same
point
thing.
is, if you're talking about 80 million Turks, I don't know if this is a big, too big of a number to throw, but I would say probably close to half of them
most of the
Yeah,
eastern portions of Turkey, these people have
Exactly.
to have Armenian bloodline in them.
Yeah.
Oh, majority, Mike,
Yeah.
the majority.
And
I'm going to make that there.
Yeah, and
bold call,
I've driven through the northeastern part of Turkey. I know I've touched on this before, but I remember one of the cities we stopped in, Rize. We stopped off in Rize, and I mean, you can tell the difference between a Turk and an Armenian.
Yeah.
Like, you can tell these people, like, nobody had to point it out to you. We spent maybe
actually, Rize is where a lot of the Hamshensis live. Mike, there's actually one of the, they're definitely are, Armenians.
It has to be. It has to be.
Yeah.
And this was just an observation that me and a couple of the guys made. This wasn't anything anyone told us.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of these Hamshensi, they know they're actually, they speak in a Hamshen Armenian dialect. They're Muslims, but still they know that
they were
they're
Muslims.
Armenian descendant.
Yeah.
So
Well, we know there's
absolutely,
over 300 Armenian dialects out there that we don't. They can't even understand one another, but they're speaking Armenian.
Right.
So.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So bringing it back to continuing
back to Andranik specifically,
yeah,
but I think since it's month of April and we're in this time, it was good that we also touched about in more detail about the massacres and the actual process of genocide and how that was unfolding.
Yeah.
Right, Vic. So Andranik basically then he was, as I said, in Europe, right? He actually even published some of his works as a freedom fighter. So he actually published a manual, I think back in 1906 in Geneva, on a manual on his national liberation struggle, some of the strategies and tactics that he deployed against Turkish government of Abdulhamid. And then there was another meeting in 1907 in Europe, ARF convention actually, and then there were some that favored actually collaboration with the Young Turks, which was just a movement that was beginning in Turkey, and a lot of them were outside of Turkey. So a lot of the ARF leaders, they took the position that we should collaborate with them, but Andranik and many others, they said no, we cannot trust them. They're not liberals, they're not our friends. They're we shouldn't collaborate with them. But unfortunately, the leadership at this time in the convention didn't listen to Andranik. So Andranik kind of withdrew from the ARF, and you can say around this time is the time that he actually distanced himself from the ARF because of mainly of this. And actually, to be fair and honest, history turned out to be on the side of Andranik. He said you shouldn't collaborate, and he was right. And then basically, but he continued his activities as a freedom fighter. But you can say that, as you pointed out, Vic, that, he was just waiting for a proper opportunity to put himself into service to serve the cause of fighting this tyrannical brutality of Abdulhamid. And then after Abdulhamid was deposed by the Young Turks, he still did not, trust the Young Turk government, and he was right. And, for example, the 1909 Adana massacre should have been a clear signal, that the so-called new freedom-loving, liberty-loving Young Turk government was no better than the previous governments. They pursued same policies. And then, as you pointed out, in 1912, a war broke out, which is known as the First Balkan War.
Sorry, I had jumped the question back then. We're back to my original question.
He's just giving a build-up story to it, right?
Yeah. And then in 1912, the First Balkan War began, and then Andranik immediately, offered his service to Bulgarian government. And then he actually created a volunteer detachment of Armenian volunteer detachment fighting on the side of Bulgarians against the Turks. And Garigin Nejde, whom we all know, also joined him in this volunteer detachment. And this Armenian detachment actually scored a lot of important victories and was recognized and honored by the Bulgarian government in the First Balkan War between 1912 and 1913. And then, they were victorious in those wars. But unfortunately, in 1913, a second Balkan War began, which unfortunately this time Serbia and Bulgaria, that were allied against the Turks in the First Balkan War, now started to fight each other. And I don't want to get into that why, although I can, but it's a kind of off topic. But Andranik said, I'm not going to accept this. I'm not going to continue, this war, which is basically, I think he even called it a fratricidal war, of Serbs killing Bulgarians. So he and the Armenian detachment refused to fight, and they disbanded. And Andranik also basically disbanded, and he just remained in Bulgaria, but as a civilian, as you can say, like as he just lived on a farm. And then a year later, as we all know, and we saw the photo of World War I broke out, and then Turkey basically in November of 1914 attacked Russian Empire. And, Andranik, even before that, as soon as World War I broke out, he said, I want to fight on the side of Russia, not for that specifically, but of course for his own ends, for his own cause, which was the defense, the protection, and restoration of the rights of Western Armenians. And again, even as late as this time in 1914, Armenians were saying the same thing, that, Abdul Hamid, you basically signed the Treaty of Berlin and you haven't honored that. In fact, you and the Turkish government, even the Young Turks, it doesn't matter, but you trampled upon it. And then, you continued with all those killings and persecution and all massacres. And, Andranik has basically led this great Armenian volunteer detachment. There were many Armenian up to 7 Armenian volunteer detachments, but Andranik actually led the first one. First Armenian volunteer detachment, which was the largest, best organized, led personally by Andranik. And it scored a lot of important victories against the Turks. It was very successful. The reason it was very successful, but because the core of it was made up of the Fidais who knew Western Armenia like the back of their own hand. So like the first striking or vanguard battalion was this Armenian volunteer detachments who would clear the way, open the way, because, they knew this was their native soil. They knew Western Armenia very well. They actually engaged the Turks on other fronts in northern Iran. In April of 1915, an important battle took place, the Battle of Dilman near Lake Urmia or Lake Kaputan, which is in northern Iran, In this area, Andranik scored and his detachments scored an important victory against the Turks. Then they crossed into Western Armenia, and by the time they reached Van, which was one of the an important center, one of our old capitals in Western Armenia, the Turks were besieging the city, but luckily they just reached the city in time. And then his volunteer detachment in mid-May marched into of 1915. As genocide was unfortunately already unfolding, but at least the Vanetsi Armenians, the Vaspurakan Armenians from the nearby, they flocked to Van, and about 150,000 Armenians of this area of the Van province, historic Armenian province of Vaspurakan, was saved within the walls of Van. And as the Armenian volunteer detachments were able to come to their rescue, and Vanetsis themselves, they had their own, defense detachments that bravely held out. It was the Van resistance, Mike, and that Andranik was obviously greeted as a liberator as these, Armenians besieged. Finally, Andranik reached them in May of 1915. The Vanetsi Armenians were able to hold out for about a month and a half prior to that in Van. And then, but unfortunately, at that time, a counteroffensive took place, and then in June of 1915, and a lot of these Armenians in Van, they had to immediately retreat from this area after the Turkish counteroffensive. Yeah. And during the hasty retreat, Mike, they basically, unfortunately, the survivors of the genocide were cut down by Turkish and Kurdish irregular troops, allied with the Turks. So unfortunately, a lot of those Armenians from the 150,000 that I mentioned during the retreat to safety in eastern Armenia, to places like Yerevan, Echmiadzi, in these areas, Gyumri, etc., they were killed on the way of retreat. And unfortunately, it was, again, for Andranik, very sad that he couldn't save this. As you can imagine, thousands of people, this caravans of people just going, and, constantly being picked off by this, Kurdish hit and run assault, squads. And then, but at least the Armenian detachments and the Russian troops regrouped a month later. And then they actually had their own offensive. And finally, the Turks were driven away from Western Armenia. And by early 1916, with the help of Andranik and other Armenian volunteer detachments, by May of 1916, much of Mush was liberated. Plains of Mush were liberated by Andranik. Other Armenian volunteer detachments, for example, the 6th Armenian Volunteer Detachment, led by different heroes. Later on, another Armenian hero, Haik Bzhishkyants, liberated Karin, also known as Erzurum. And the troops, the Russian troops, were able to go as far as the Armenian town of Yerzenka. So by mid-1916, these Armenian troops and volunteer detachments and Russian troops, you can say, liberated most of Western Armenia was already liberated by these troops. But unfortunately, a lot of the Armenians were already killed by the Turks during the genocide. And a pretext a lot of the time for the killing were these Armenian, volunteer detachments, which were very small and insignificant. And most of the, Armenian villagers, they had nothing to do with the volunteer detachments and the Fidais. And, you can see the twisted logic of the Turks, they were just killed because, at least that's the excuse that they're
standing
using.
Up for themselves. Yeah.
They were standing up for themselves, first of all. And second of all, like a lot of the Armenians, the Ottoman Armenians, were conscripted to the Ottoman army, like the regular non-Fidai Armenians, the male population. It was conscripted as soldiers. And they fought as Ottoman soldiers, like in tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands even.
Well, they weren't needed anymore, so they were disposed.
And they were, they were disarmed and killed as well, They were very loyal, So I'm just...
Well, we see that, we've seen that throughout history.
When the Turkish government, when they falsify Armenian history, deny the genocide, these are some of the twisted excuses that they use, So
Speaking of the denying the genocide, I don't know if this is a current event that just happened a couple of weeks ago. You know, Disney released that new
the Marvel show,
the Marvel's
Moon Knight.
Moon Knight or Moonlight, something like
Moon
that.
Knight, yeah.
And in that episode, and I actually watched that episode, there's a scene where one of the characters is telling him that, you know, if you had allowed for this spirit to release whatever it is, she would have prevented Hitler and the Armenian genocide. Yeah. So the entire Azeri and Turkish viewership, I guess you want to call them, have been attacking IMDb and giving it a 1-star review. And you should see the comments that they're putting at. And it's funny how now, and this is thankful to all the efforts that we've been doing as Armenians, pushing the agenda of recognition of the genocide. Now you're seeing it in movies and shows, and you're seeing the United States American culture actually realizing that these people are denying real history. You know, and when people talk about, well, you know, we went out there and screamed and yelled every year, you know, recognize the genocide, this and that. See, they say the fruits of the labor are paying in some way. It's in the mainstream media now. People are talking about this, and that's so important.
Well, they seem to be having problems with American comic book.
Forget about the comic books and this and that. It has nothing to do with that. What I'm saying is like,
but it's Marvel based, and then I've talked to you about how, you know, DC Comics. There's a city called Batman in Turkey, and they tried to massive lawsuit towards. I mean, it's just. But in terms of what happened, I was even shocked.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. When I saw this, I don't know, Gevork, if you saw this. What happened with?
No, I haven't.
This is very fresh. It's like 2 days ago.
No, not 2 days ago.
I thought I saw it 2 days ago, 3 days ago.
It's like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really? I just saw it a couple days ago.
It was beginning of April. So about 3 weeks ago. So but yeah, I just wanted to bring that and mention it that this denial and the thing is, they themselves are so brainwashed with that history of that, you know, this didn't happen. And it's unfortunate, but my point was that these efforts that we've been doing all these years, it's starting to finally come to the forefront. And like I said, major media is so important.
Of course it is.
Especially with the movies and shows. You're talking about millions of people watching this show. And actually the mention of it is so important.
Yeah, the tides have to turn somehow, right? At some point.
Vic, I absolutely agree with you. I'm going to digress a little bit, but since again it's month of April and genocide time, I want to actually talk a little bit about this aspect that you're making, this great point that, you know, United States was actually one of the first countries to actually, acknowledge and recognize the Armenian genocide, and a lot of people don't know that. And let me very briefly, if I may, I know it's kind of off topic, but I'll be very brief. But I think it's important, you know, to use this opportunity to
Well, there is no off topic because the whole month is about the Armenian genocide.
Yes, exactly. You know, and even the struggle of Andranik is kind of related to all of this and the genocide. So, as you know, this great Raphael Lemkin, who was, you know, a lawyer of especially, you know, specializing in international law. So he's the one who actually coined the term genocide. Yeah. And when he coined that, Vic, he actually coined it in the early 1940s. He came up with the term. But he said, you know, actually, you know, as a young man growing up, I was a witness in the news. I was constantly, you know, hearing about these events, about, you know, Armenians being killed. Later on, he actually read about Soghomon Tehlerian, who, as you know, avenged the killing of the Armenians by assassinating Talat Pasha. So Lemkin knew all of this. He followed the news as a young man. And he said, like, I was shocked that, you know, there is no international law that would actually punish these criminals, such as Talat Pasha and others, that this young man, Soghomon Tehlerian, has to take upon himself to, you know, as an avenger, to actually take, as a vigilante, to take justice into his own hand and do this. So he said, no, we need sort of like mechanisms so this never happens again. And when he actually coined the term genocide, he started working on this as early as 1930s, Raphael Lemkin, living in Poland. Later on, he moved to United States. He, as a lawyer of international law, he said that, I basically came up with the word genocide and later on the Convention on Genocide, the UN Convention, having in mind, the Armenian Genocide, which is a textbook example of genocide. So there's actually like an interview done by him for the United Nations, Raphael Lemkin. It's actually available on YouTube as well. When he brings the example of the Armenian genocide, and it says, that drove me to make sure that this never happens again. And the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide of the United Nations was actually made having in mind, the Armenian case, the Armenian genocide, as Lemkin pointed out. And he actually, in 1952, the United States government actually petitioned the United States, the UN International Court, clearly stating the Armenian genocide, using those words. This is May 28, 1952. So we can say as early as 1952 when the term, and this wasn't by half chance. This was, again, thanks to the efforts of Raphael Lemkin. He's the author and credited for doing this. So later on, other presidents and other bodies simply Vic just reaffirmed the Armenian genocide. As even in 1981, President Reagan again said, the Armenian genocide. In his speech, he actually mentioned it. That's a reaffirmation. So, we're actually grateful, President Biden did the same, because a lot of the times the Turks were using this and saying like, look, the United States government hasn't recognized the Armenian genocide. Well, it's simply factually not true. As I pointed out, they did it back in as early as 1952 with Raphael Lemkin.
Well, not just that.
On behalf of the U.S. government.
Yeah, not just that. And when we go back to the episode with Artovan and Ruth Tomasian, we actually had some, we went through some pictures. The American public knew about this, and back then obviously it wasn't called genocide, but they knew what was happening.
Yeah, they knew fully what was going on.
You're talking about
it was
major
in papers.
Yeah, it was in papers. There's photos. Major celebrities got involved at the time, and they aided like $30 million or something like that to help the people that were being exiled and the orphans and this and that. So, I was thinking about this. You're talking about obviously there was a movement. The United States was helping. But then all of a sudden it kind of got faded out, right? And they didn't, in the public, as the generation changed, they forgot about it. Yeah. And then all of a sudden now we're fighting when America knew about what was it and they ate it, all of a sudden we were trying to get the recognition again. So can you imagine, like, if you're talking about 1952, that's a 30, 40 year gap?
Yes.
So,
absolutely, that's a great point, Vic. And I'm sorry.
Okay, you want to take a sip of water? You okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. Even as you pointed out, not 30 million, Vic John, but $3 billion in today's value, approximately. This is how much was raised by humanitarian relief launched by President Woodrow Wilson, who was the president. I know this is a different topic, but we should definitely mention it. And it's worth mentioning again and again. I think you're going to have Ara Papian, who was
I was just going to mention that.
To Canada. So, I'm sure he will talk more in detail about Woodrow Wilson and his great efforts to aid the Armenian survivors. But he set up in 1915 immediately when Henry Morgenthau, who was the American ambassador in Turkey, in the Ottoman Empire, he said that, Armenians are being killed en masse, and this is a murder of a nation. Because, as you know, the word genocide wasn't still coined, right, by Lemkin. So Henry Morgenthau said that, a murder of a nation, an extermination of the whole Armenian nation is taking place. And he sent these dispatches, these telegrams to, the Wilson administration. And he said, can we please at least set up like a humanitarian efforts to save the remnants of the Armenian survivors, which, mostly were orphans and women and, few survivors, unfortunately. So, and then President Wilson launched the Near East Relief, initially known as the Armenian Relief. Later on, it was also called the Armenian Assyrian Relief. But first, in 1915, it was just the Armenian Relief. And then it was renamed in 1919 to Near East Relief. So it was in the United States, Vic, this was a nationwide effort, nationwide. In all the states of the United States, the Near East was operating schools, I don't know, like kindergartens, colleges, universities, churches. All these institutions were collecting money to save Armenians. And in today's value, it comes out to more than $3 billion. They set up different orphanages, American-run orphanages in Western Armenia and throughout the Near East, also in Eastern Armenia as well. And in these orphanages, thousands, as much as 132,000 Armenian orphans. 132,000. I mean, that's a huge number.
Yeah,
okay?
Again, numbers that are just not being able to comprehend what that is. Yeah.
And this was all happening at this time. Andranik was an eyewitness to this. Andranik was a participant. And we're going to talk about Andranik. Even in the United States in later years, he actually raised also funds for the survivors and others as well.
I wanted to get into that actually. Like, once the first Armenian Republic was formed, which is basically the time period we're kind of hovering around, the late 19-teens and then early 1920s and whatnot, right? During the Bolshevik Revolution and whatnot. What role did he play specifically? I mean, among many, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Mike. Basically, as you know, the First Republic was proclaimed in 1918, but even a little bit before that, already Andranik's prominence grew when after the Bolshevik Revolution, there was a collapse of the Western Armenia front. So the Bolsheviks, they actually did not want to fight the Turks. Unfortunately, they said, we're going to bring our troops home. And immediately, basically, the Armenian forces, which were by this time, fortunately, before that, there was a provisional government, which, was actually the lawful government in many ways, recognized by, international community in Armenia, is led by Kerensky. That government basically, was supportive and was willing to continue the fight against the Turks. But unfortunately, the Bolsheviks in a coup took over, and then in November of 1917, and immediately thereafter, as early as December 5, 1917, in Yerzenka, the so-called armistice over Yerzenka was signed with the Turkish side, basically signaled that they're going to withdraw.
Yeah.
So in early 1918, Mike, Armenians were left all to themselves to fight against this Turkish advance. And Andranik was actually tasked with holding the front on the Karin area. By this time, in early 1918, he was actually given the title by the Russian government of Major General. So Andranik became a Major General, and he led the Western Armenian Division. And there were an Armenian Corps also set up earlier in 1917.
Yeah.
So there were a couple of Armenian divisions, but on this vast Western Armenia front, these couple of 2-3 divisions were not able to hold out against tens of thousands of these Ottoman Turkish troops. So Andranik was given the task of defending the Karin area of Karin, around Karin, also known as Erzurum. And he actually stood out for 2-3 months, heroically defended Karin, General Andranik. But he was just overwhelmed with the numbers of, constant attacks of new, fresh Turkish forces pouring in. And he gradually, Andranik, again, with the survivors, few left there, he withdrew to Eastern Armenia, to Lori. And there were, as we all know, several key battles in May of 1918 against the advancing Turkish army. that basically occupied Western Armenia, and they actually they continued their invasion and attacked Eastern Armenia, crossed Kars, because at this time, Kars was also part of Eastern Armenia. A lot of the times it's listed or called Western Armenia, but it's not true, you know. It was called Eastern Armenia, or sometimes also Russian Armenia. So they occupied Kars, they occupied this area and crossed the Arax River, Ahurian, and then invaded also other areas of Eastern Armenia. And then Andranik actually, again, heroically led the defense around different fronts in Lori, which, as we know, is northeastern Armenia, you know, this area. And then others like Nezhde fought in what is today Vanadzor. We all know, for example, the heroic battles of Sardarabad and Aparan, right? Dro was, you know, fighting in Aparan, Sardarabad, Moses Silikian and others on that front. And then basically, but the Turks, they actually were able to, you know, sort of penetrate, especially in the Vanadzor area, and they advanced further east. And then, you know, the Armenian leaders decided to basically thinking that, you know, we couldn't hold out much longer. They actually struck this Treaty of Batum with the Turks on June 4th, 1918. But the thing is that, you know, Andranik, again, disagreed with this treaty. You know, he felt that the Armenian side could actually hold out more and could actually fight the Turkish army longer. So he disagreed with, you know, having this treaty with the Turks, the Treaty of Batum.
Well, the amount of battles this man has seen by this time, I think his, you know, he kind of felt that he can do this. So
battle tested,
you know, but unfortunately, a lot of at that time, I don't know what the government was, but you know, people get scared. It's understandable, you know. So a regular person who hasn't seen battle versus a general who's seen
you can't understand
tens and 20s battles right now, like, you know,
you can't understand.
His knowledge of
his whole adult life, he's been fighting.
Yeah.
You know,
right. That's a great point, Vic. Actually, well, the government specifically was mostly made up of the First Republic, of the Armenian Revolutionary Federation, members of the ARF. Right. Yeah. So he basically, you know, disagreed with this policy, and again, he was making the argument, well, look, the Turks, you know, now you have this treaty, so-called Treaty of Batum, you know. They're not going to, first of all, honor the treaty. You know, once they take over other areas, Artsakh, Syunik, Nakhichevan, and their goal was reaching Baku and even beyond. They had this pan-Turkish goal of creating a vast Turkish empire known as Turan. You know, reaching Baku, connecting with the Tatars there who weren't called Azeris. We talked about this before. So basically, you know, he said, look, there's this nefarious goals, and you're striking a treaty with them. They're not going to honor this treaty. You know, he disagreed, and you know, he didn't believe this rump state initially established or proclaimed could last. Very small, and again, he just mainly disagreed with, you know, this rapprochement with the Turks. No rapprochement. Because as you said, he was a warrior. He knew them. You know, he said, all my life I fought as a revolutionary, and I knew that, you know, they're not going to honor any treaties when it comes to the Armenians. So he continued the resistance. He actually became, I don't know, he wasn't like his troops. Remember we talked about the Western Armenian division made up this hardcore Fidais, revolutionaries who were loyal just to him. You know, they loved him to death. And then he just withdrew downwards to this area of Nakhichevan.
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to ask you. I was going to actually, you know, what was his role? Because, you know, I want to say it was Nakhichevan, Syunik, and also Artsakh. You know, and also, is this the same time that Nezhde was kind of involved in this situation as well? So my question more is like, what was his key role in these regions?
Right. So basically, that's a great question, Vic. Andranik, basically, he said, look, you know, first of all, the Treaty of Batum wasn't valid in terms of international law for several reasons. Then, fortunately, it was even, even the Turks rejected it even before the end of World War One, luckily. But, Andranik was making this point that, look, all these Armenian areas, you initially, even not this valid Treaty of Batum, you're leaving them out, and the Armenians are not protected in these areas. The Nakhichevan Armenians, the Sunnik Armenians, the Artsakh Armenians, they're attacked by the Turks and combined Turks and Tatars. Sometimes even the Kurds would help them. So, he said, I have to protect them. If you're not going to protect them, I will take that upon myself. And with his division of Western Armenians, he actually ventured into this area initially in the months of June and July after the Treaty of Batum. And he led the resistance here against the Turkish forces, against the local Tatars there operating, these bands attacking Armenian villages. And he basically, he was beloved by these Armenians there because he protected them until, you can say the end of World War One. For one point, he actually made a counteroffensive from Nakhichevan and Sunnik area into, again, northern Iran, fought the Turkish army, again, Turkish elements there, and then again withdrew back to, Nakhichevan and especially Sunnik, because it was more mountainous and impregnable area compared to Nakhichevan. But he defended a lot of the Nakhichevan Armenians, the Sunnik Armenians. And actually after the armistice of Mudros, after October of 30th, he actually, in November, he said, again, Armenians in Artsakh were being killed and attacked. So he decided to actually aid the Armenians there. And he marched with his, Western Armenian Division, which also was known as the Armenian Striking Division. He marched into Artsakh. But unfortunately, on the way to Artsakh, we talked a little bit about, William Thompson, the British general. Remember in the previous Artsakh episode, we talked about him. So by this time, the British, after November 13, 1918, they occupied Baku, and they sent an envoy to Andranik, and on his way to Shushi, an envoy actually, when he was already in Artsakh, he just met him there, and he said, prior to entering Shushi, he said, don't do this, there's going to be a Paris peace, not Paris, but there's going to be a peace conference. And then this peace conference, based on the right of self-determination, which meant those areas with the majority population, they themselves, through a referendum, they get to decide which country they want to be part of. So obviously by this time, Mike, Artsakh was majority Armenian. So, obviously through the right to self-determine, the Artsakh Armenians would self-determine to be part of, and that's exactly what they did, be part of the Republic of Armenia. This Armenian populated historic part of Armenia area wants to be part of the Republic of Armenia. It's only fair and democratic thing to do. So actually William Thompson, the governor, the British general government of Baku, he promised, he said, that's what's going to happen. So Nakhichevan, Sunnik, and Artsakh, they would be part of Republic of Armenia. So actually, Andranik took his word for it. He said, okay, I will not do this, because he said, if you do that, then you're going to be, that's going to be a problem. You're going to trample on that right. And then, I cannot guarantee you that, the right to self-determine would be carried out here. So he believed him. He stopped, and he actually turned back to Sunnik. And actually a number of British officers themselves, they were, later on wrote their memoirs. They say, we respect Andranik so much, but, William Thompson made this pledge, but, unfortunately, we couldn't even honor this pledge. I wouldn't say that was done in a malicious way. Mike, Thompson believed, the results of the Paris Peace Conference would be respected, but events later on, especially in 1920, took a different course.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly, things weren't exactly set in stone with anybody during this time. So much changed post-World War II, which was basically from 1918 to about 23 in that 5-year span.
Today, we still have the problem with Artsakh today, and later the Bolsheviks of annexing and illegally making it part of, not independent. Artsakh has never been part of independent Azerbaijan. We talked about this in very detail.
I do want to mention people who are maybe joining us or now and don't know about our past episodes. Go back to episode 3. That was our 3rd episode.
Very
when Gevork Nazarian was our
comprehensive.
and we covered the history of Artsakh going all the way back from the beginning days to current events. Go listen to it. It's very important. You will learn a lot. So I just want to mention that to the audience that episode 3, again, it is available on YouTube as well. And you can, on your favorite podcast platform, go listen to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's so important because we're still dealing with the issues that, develop, especially at this time, Vic. It's like, it's like what happened back then is still we're dealing with the issues and problems that happened back then. And you're absolutely right. We did cover in detail all the way to our own days, why we're still, at a point that we are in Artsakh and we're still
what bothers me
for the rights of Artsakh Armenians.
What bothers me is like, we know it's a lie. They know it's a lie. Pretty much most of the world that knows about this knows it's a lie. But like for some reason we can't do anything about it. Like it's just drives me nuts.
Well, it's an insatiable pursuit of, you keep pounding the lie enough, it turns into truth. And this is the battle, right? It's their truth. We know it's a lie. And then our truth, always butting heads with one another. It's just, unfortunately, we've talked about this a million times. It's a financial thing.
I understand, but you're talking about our truth being,
But how many times throughout
and their truth being this long?
No, I get it. But like anybody who's a fan of world history, now putting our story aside, knows that there's a lot of things in our timeline that have kind of vanished and have resurfaced recently, right? There's a lot of things I look into. I was like, wait a minute, I never learned this in school.
Yeah.
Look into it. Now you find out there's other people talking about this, certain time periods, certain peoples from 300, 400, 500 years ago that for whatever reason was suppressed and vanished.
Nobody learned anything in school. I'm sorry.
That's
Those
what I'm
history
saying.
classes were just
again,
it's a
nonstop back and forth. And unfortunately, the United States turns into like this ivory tower of accepting truth, which I don't agree with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even though this is what we're chasing because it is a superpower on the world stage, but I don't know. Money talks, unfortunately.
I think, most importantly, Mike, speaking of United States, and we did talk about this again in the Artsakh episode, but I want to repeat it since it's important. It's very important that United States officially and other, co-chairs of the Minsk group, they pointed out that the Artsakh conflict is not over as long as the rights of the people, of the Armenian people living there are respected by the Aliyev government. The issue is not over. The Artsakh conflict is not over. And, they point, this is very important. We have to pursue this, and the international law, which is actually on our side, we should point it out. So it's very encouraging that at least these superpowers that you mentioned, at least, they could have even prevented the war or have done more during the war. But at least after the war, when Aliyev came out and said, it's over, the issue of Artsakh is over, the conflict is over, we're done with it. No. The United States, we're not done.
It's posturing.
The Artsakh issue is an open question to be settled, respecting the rights of the Armenians living on their native soil.
But that's my frustration. There is nothing to settle. It has always been part of Armenian land. Go learn history.
Right.
That's
right. Exactly. And I said, for example, like Vic, even Azerbaijan itself, when they just reestablished their independence back in 1991, On October 18, 1991, their parliament adopted this resolution saying that the period of Soviet Azerbaijan was an occupation period when our land was occupied by the Bolsheviks, by the communists and the Soviets, and we don't recognize that period. We are. Listen to this, Mike.
I didn't know this. This is great.
We're the successor. We're the successor state of Azerbaijan of 1918 and 1920. Fine, but the Azerbaijan of 1918, 1920 did not. I repeat, did not include Artsakh within its boundaries. There's no international legal document that can prove and show that Artsakh was part of.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There you go.
There's the League of Nations resolution that's saying, based on the law of self-determination, since Artsakh has an Armenian majority, it's part of Republic of Armenia.
Yeah.
So the Azeris, if they say, their parliament officially said, no, Soviet Azerbaijan period, which we weren't independent, that's not our legacy. That's just occupation. We're the successor state of today's Azerbaijan, is the successor state of their Azerbaijan of 1918, 1920. Fine, Artsakh was not part of that independent Azerbaijan.
I just want to take this and shove it down their throat, and the throat of Armenians that actually, oh my God, it's so frustrating.
I know.
Okay. Because a lot of remember we talked about this on the Artsakh episode, Armenians themselves are often ignorant of their own history.
So that's what you were about to say.
That's what you guys are doing is a great platform. So someone like me and others, we can actually point this out. And I hope they just follow you guys. They can learn so much and use these arguments. Use them.
Our goal isn't just our own people. Our goal is for other cultures to learn about our history and know the truth about our history. This isn't made up. This is all. That's why we have people like yourself and your colleague giving us this information, providing all these articles so we can, they're fact checked. It's not made up. So people can learn about it, I'm
beginning to hate that term.
Fact check.
Yes, I really am. I really am. But anyway, so, with all this, with everything that we've talked about, what would you say, let's call him General Andranik, huh? General Andranik's legacy.
So after 1918, absolutely. He was General Andranik, and we should honor that, call him with the title General Andranik.
And
wait a minute. Before you get into the legacy, let's talk about him. He did something. He went to the United States. Right?
Oh yeah.
You forgot about that. Can we talk about that? I want to talk about what he.
Absolutely. Actually, great. Yes, Vic. Actually, that happened right after he left Sunik. So we did cover. You're right on the mark, so to speak. He left Sunik in after the winter. So he wintered in Sunik. Then again, he disagreed with a lot of the policies of the leaders of the First Republic, so he decided to leave Sunik. And then at this time, you pointed out Nezhde, a little bit after that, but others, he put in charge of defending Sunik. And then Nezhde, after August of 1919, took over. So, he knew that Sunik was defended. So he basically, and parts of Nakhichevan and even Artsakh. So, he withdrew with his men to Echmiadzin, him being, devout follower of the Armenian church. He basically, again, got Catholicos' blessing. Catholicos Gevork the Fifth, blessed him before him venturing to Europe. He actually, there were a lot of swords and weapons. He gave and sold some of the horses to Armenian farmers, and a lot of them to the Armenian army and the weaponry. And then some of his men just disbanded. Some men joined the regular army of the Republic of Armenia, and some, decided to continue and, with General Andranik. Not a lot, few. Actually, so Andranik actually decided to pursue the Armenian cause through diplomacy, and then he ventured to Paris. Again, why to Paris? Because we know that's where the Paris Peace Conference was happening, and we didn't have a chance to talk a lot about someone like Bohos Nubar, who is a huge figure, but Bohos Nubar basically led the Armenian delegation, Armenian national delegation in Paris, which mostly represented the Western Armenians, and then Avetis Aharonyan represented the delegation of the Republic of Armenia in the peace conference. So in the Paris peace conference, we had this like dual bipartisan sort of formation. It was called as United Armenian Delegation or the Delegation of United Armenia, but it was made up of two segments. And the goal was obviously, of eventually the, establishment of United Armenia, which would include these two portions of Armenia, Eastern and Western, as United Armenia. And that exactly what happened. The Allies said, absolutely, they actually in the Paris Peace Conference as early as January 1919, they said they will be a united, integral Armenia, state of Armenia from sea to sea, which was a huge territory. And then this was actually affirmed by the British, by the Americans and other allies. It's very important that we also have that, and eventually this culminated with the Treaty of Sèvres on August 10 of 1920. And even before that, Mike, there was also the San Remo Conference, which allocated, 4 of the provinces to the Republic of Armenia. Bitlis, Trapezon, Erzurum, and Van would be part of the Republic of Armenia, these provinces. And then Andranik also, was part of these diplomatic efforts in Paris immediately after he left. So he left Armenia on April 27, 1919, on train to Tiflis. And then from Tiflis, to Batum, they took the train. The ship to Europe. And then in Paris, he was part of the also, closely working with the Armenian national delegation of Bohos Nubar, this outstanding Armenian leader.
Which we'll do an episode about him. Yeah.
Oh, yes. I don't want to get into too much into them. That wouldn't do credit and be service because Bohos Nubar, has done so much. Established in 1906, the Armenian General Benevolent Union, and from 1912 by Catholicos Gevork V, he was, assigned as leader of the Armenian national delegation to defend the rights of the Western Armenians. And then especially during the Paris Peace Conference, he has done a lot. Hopefully, there will be an episode.
We will. There's so many amazing people from the past that have done so much for the cause of Armenia in general, and Western Armenia. It's just, obviously we've talked about this. We're covering like the main, and then we're going to dissect it. So this will be part of that as well.
There's so many, Vic, you're absolutely right. There's so many great and outstanding Armenian figures that, we should cover and they should be known. And obviously, Bohos Nubar is just one example. There's so many. Even, Avetis Aharonyan in his own right, he was also an amazing, diplomat, leader, and actually a poet. He was a poet turned diplomat. He had to kind of.
And most of them are controversial figures. Very smart. Very smart, controversial figures.
Yeah. And oftentimes, unfortunately, they didn't see eye to eye, Bohos Nubar and Avetis Aharonyan. But to their credit, eventually they found sort of this
happy medium.
Common ground.
So common ground. So they kind of like, they said, no, this is, for the sake of our unity and our cause, we should closely collaborate and cooperate. So, to their credit, and Andranik, as I said, he joined these efforts. And in late 1919, in November of 1919, Mike, Andranik, along with others, was sent to the United States on behest of Bohos Nubar, part of the United Armenia delegation, including representatives from the Republic of Armenia and the Armenian national delegation, or so to speak, like Western Armenians. So it was like a united Armenia encompassing, representatives from the Republic of Armenia or Eastern Armenia and the representatives from the national delegation. And Andranik was one of them. Hovhannes Kajaznuni, the first prime minister of the Republic of Armenia, was actually led the United delegation to the United States and arrived earlier, like in October of 1919. Andranik joined him with his deputy, Haik Bonapartian. That was his name, Haik Bonapartian.
Interesting last name. Yeah. Very interesting last name.
From Bonaparte.
Napoleon.
I guess Napoleon, had a lasting impact as this great military hero. So he was named, or an ancestor named Bonaparte in his honor.
Interesting.
So he happened to be Bonapartian. So Haik Bonapartian and like many others that were part of this important figures from, as I said, Republic of Armenia and the national delegation. And then basically Andranik was tasked for raising funds for the Armenian army, for the defense needs of the Armenian army. And then he would go, and we have these surviving photographs of Andranik. They would have these banquets, gala banquets, and a lot of the participants weren't even Armenians, They were like Americans, they would come, and some like Armenian Americans would also come, and they would raise money in these banquets. We know this galas, phenomenon, right? Yeah, galas. They would raise money, and then that money was actually allocated to the Armenian army. And Andranik is, he raised just like around $500,000 in this time, 1919, 1920, in Fresno. But you have to keep in mind, Mike, that 500,000 back then is by today's amount, it's like millions and millions of dollars.
Okay? I mean, based on
like
the mathematical thing with the inflation and whatnot, and the cost.
Inflation, exactly.
I think it's like 10 or 11 times. Yeah, 10 or 11 times the value.
Yes, you're absolutely spot on, and that's just in Fresno. He raised millions of dollars in currency back then, like the currency of 1919, 1920. So that amounts to like tens of millions of dollars today, up to maybe $100 million.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing feat. He did it like in a matter of a year or something. He actually continued raising money later on, not for the army, but more for the the orphans, the survivors after Republic of Armenia fell.
It's crazy to think that Andranik Pasha ended up in California.
In Fresno.
Yeah.
There's actually there's pictures of him in Fresno.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
You're absolutely right. So he stayed pretty much, I think, like 1922 in Fresno. He traveled mainly in the United States, as I said, raising funds and doing very important work.
Mm-hmm.
But by this time, as we know, by late 1920, early 1921, Armenia lost its independence. It was occupied and partitioned by the Kemalists and the Bolsheviks. So the western part was occupied by the Kemalists, and the eastern part was occupied by the Bolsheviks, and like a puppet, not independent so-called Soviet Armenia was proclaimed by the Bolsheviks. And then, but that wasn't independent, and obviously by early 1920s, Andranik was devastated that, his dream of seeing Armenia independent, strong, full of life, united, encompassing western and eastern portions of Armenia, it was not realized. And, he even said at the end of his life that, my work is not fulfilled. That pains me and saddens me that, my work is, has to be continued by someone else. And I wasn't able to complete what I began as a revolutionary. Those are his famous words. And, he actually briefly ventured to Paris in 1921, married there a woman, Navart. Her name was Navart. And basically, at least at the end of his life, he, for the second time, he married, obviously, but he kind of like found, hopefully, personal happiness with her. And then in 1922, actually the best man in the wedding was Boris Nubar, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So because it was, it was very close with Nubar right after, he was working so closely with the national delegation. So Nubar was the best man during, or Kavor, as we say in Armenian.
Yeah.
And then he, in 1922, returned to Fresno, settled down in Fresno, and then, a living legend for those years, the Armenians at that time living in Fresno, even people like William Saroyan, as a young man, he would recount that he was so impressed by Andranik, this living legend living among them,
And Soho Montelerian was in Fresno too.
Yeah. Yes, Soho Montelerian, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And, Andranik, until the end of his life, Vic, he just lived in Fresno. His health obviously was not in good standing, and it further deteriorated. And then in around 1926 and 1926, he especially in 1927, he went to sanatorium to treat some of his, he still had a lot of old wounds and general just conditions. And basically he passed away in Richardson Springs, which is in Northern California. It's like a sanatorium. While getting treatment there, he passed away on August 31st, 1927. And obviously that was sad news to Armenians worldwide. Their beloved hero passed away. You can even say he was like an all Armenian hero. He was part of the older, began as just a Fidai with no political affiliation. Then he was part of the Hunchaks, then part of the ARF. At the end of his life, he was close to the, Ramgavars. Yeah. So basically all the traditional parts. So you can call him like the all Armenian hero.
Yeah.
He didn't mind, and he
was a
care,
uniter. He was a uniter.
Yeah. He said, I'm fighting for our cause. Yeah. I don't, there are no political partisan nuances to his life. I'm fighting for the freedom and liberty of my people and my land. And then, he just, as I said, in Fresno, the news spread then all over Armenian diaspora and Armenia itself. He was initially laid to rest in Fresno in the Ararat cemetery of Fresno. But then his remains were exhumed and transferred to Paris because the Armenians felt that, the Armenian community in Paris wanted him laid to rest in Père Lachaise, which is the cemetery of, Armenian and especially French heroes and notables, Père Lachaise cemetery. So he was laid to rest there. His remains were laid to rest there and remained there until early 2000, when the Armenian government in February of 2000 actually asked the French government to, again, move his remains to Armenia. And he was honorably in February of 2000 laid to rest in Yerevan, the pantheon of Armenian warriors, fallen warriors. And, it's, again, today it's a shrine. His, cemetery is a shrine, Andranik's. So that was basically, you can say that today he finally is on his native soil and rests in his, native soil. And it's his grave is like a shrine to many and a site of pilgrimage for many Armenians.
Oh, I could imagine. I haven't been there in a while, but the next time I go, I'm definitely visiting this.
I've never been.
Oh, absolutely. So, and there are a lot of other notables, their remains are there as well. Mike, of course, mainly it's known for those Armenians that fought in the Artsakh Liberation War, right? Also the ones that fell in 2016, 2020. But we also have a number of other heroes there as well. Andranik is one of them.
Going into, we're kind of touching on his legacy more or less, right? What's the most important, Gevork, in your opinion or your thought? What would be the most important things that we should remember about Andranik and his legacy and what he's done and the impact that it may have had, possibly till this day?
Right, right. Oh, yeah, that's a great question, Mike. Like I said, he is more, if anything, Andranik is a symbol. He has become this icon, not only of the national liberation struggle of the 19th and early 20th century, but just an icon of Armenian resistance, Armenian freedom. So in the minds and in the minds of, you can say, all Armenians, I don't think there's an Armenian in this world who doesn't know like Andranik as an Armenian hero. I'm being totally honest. Like, his most recognized Armenian hero figure, one of the most recognized, and definitely the most recognized of the 19th and 20th century liberation struggle. So in that sense, he motivated a lot of the generations to come that came after him. They looked to him as a role model. Yeah. As a role model. So, for example, even we talked about the Artsakh liberation war, like our freedom fighters looked to him. Like, of course, and other heroes as well. I'm not denying that. But, like, he was the, quintessential symbol of, Armenian man standing up to oppression, to those who persecuted his people and fought on, and never compromised on that. Never compromised. Like we talked about, like, there were like these political figures who even told him, come on, Andranik. Like, for example, in 1908, when there was this collaboration, they said, come on, you're just being too, hardcore. Why don't you collaborate? You can have a seat in the Ottoman parliament. And he would just scoff at these people. He would say, collaborate with the people that, have so much blood on their hands, and it turned out he was right, the old warrior was right, And then, for Armenians is this symbol of resilient, of standing up and fighting for what you believe in, for freedom, for liberty, for justice, for dignity, most of all, I would even say. Like, he was dignified. And let me tell you, Mike, he's even a hero in, like, as I said, like in Western Armenia today, among the Kurds, among the, like, even, there are a lot of Armenians there. He's still a hero. Yeah. Andranik is this freedom fighter who fought for the oppressed. Yeah. That's how they view him. They don't view him as like Armenian, They view him as someone who fought for a people that were oppressed by against an oppressor. Yeah. Be it a sultan, again, he fought against a tyrant. He fought against tyranny.
My kind of guy.
Now, you speaking of
my kind of guy.
You mentioning him being a symbol and almost like a inspiration of hope to keep fighting for the right cause. We want to, introduce our officially our fifth sculpture.
Yes.
And I know this is a surprise for everyone, but here it is.
It is.
There you go, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, Andranik Pasha.
Amazing.
And this is done by my talented co-host, Mike Balyan. He worked so hard for this. I know we released Komitas last week, but this is
what we've been working hard on.
Yeah, working hard. We have many more coming up.
Absolutely stunning. Great work, Mike.
Different views. Obviously, this is a 3D format of it, but this will be sculpted in marble. And this is available now for pre-order. So make sure you go to medherosner.com. Go ahead and reserve and order your piece. We're going to be working fast on these to get them going. And again, we will start with a limited amount. So go ahead and pre-order it so you can get those first versions. And again, these are all, with any of our sculptures, they are registered to your name and they are numbered. They come with a certificate. So these do gain value. But we have many more coming. So
yeah, we got a lot more coming.
Hope everybody likes
paying
talent of
homage
this- yeah.
paying homage to a very famous photo of his.
To the legendary general, and
Yes.
rightfully, Mike, you've done justice to him by depicting him in his major general's
Yeah.
uniform.
Yeah.
With the trademark papacha. It's like
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Very
we went
well
back and
done.
forth on
that was kind of fun to make.
but
It
because
was-
there's so many good pictures of him, we were like going back and forth. We felt like, this is the most famous of him. Like people, when they
Yes.
think of Andranik, they think of that picture,
there was
Right.
one image that really kind of resonated with me. Obviously, it's a typical photo of any military man or anybody kind of sitting off center in a chair in his military uniform without the hat on. But the hat, me and Vic both
Yeah.
agree that it's gotta, the papach has to be on there.
Yeah.
It has to. Just like
Gevork,
the photo.
Before we end the show, I realized that we haven't asked this question to you.
Wait,
And
I was
we've
wondering.
never
I'm like,
asked him this question
Okay.
because
Okay.
this question came up after
Oh,
the
that's
episodes
right.
were
It
done.
came out
So
afterwards. Yes.
it is the time machine question. So
Yeah, we
we
gotta
want to
hear your
ask
answer
you
on
is, since you, I mean, I don't know how you're going to answer this because there's so many amazing eras, but if you had a
Gevork-
time machine,
Gevork's time traveled.
yeah, of course, he has.
100% he's
But,
time traveled.
I need a ticket. If you had a time machine, a real one, and what era or time frame would you go back to witness yourself? And being a historian and having this amazing knowledge in your head, what time would you want to go?
Right. Well, like Mike said, there are several periods that I would love to go, but if I have to choose just one, so I have to choose just one, right?
Just one, yeah.
I mean,
For
that's
now,
the
for
first
now.
one.
For now.
First
Next
trip.
now.
next time
Okay,
you
for
come
the
on.
first trip,
Next time you
okay.
come on, we'll ask this question again.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
want to
okay,
hear the other
okay.
answer.
Yeah, tickets are expensive,
Right,
so
right,
only
right.
one trip right
I'll
now.
have other chances as well, to mention other places and time to
Yeah.
go to. But I guess, Vic, I would choose, just again in basically you can say like the beginning or the origins, and I would want to see how and our ancestors, because they were our ancestors directly living in our homeland, how the temple of Portasar, which is also known as Göbekli Tepe, was erected, because it's so fascinating. It's such a thing, and no one even knows how this temple was built. It's like near the city of Urfa, historically Urha. No one knows how these huge slabs of stone were moved some 12,000 years ago by supposedly quote unquote these primitive people, by quote unquote hunters and gatherers, which I don't think that was the case, because some technology and very kind of advanced technology was used, and the carvings are beautiful. It's just unbelievable. You can't even fathom like how did they move those huge slabs, putting one on top of each other like in a T formation.
Yeah.
It's like you need you need like pooling machines or I don't know what. So I would love that, because that's like at the core, at the roots level of how human civilization began in Armenian highland. And I would love to see that, and like, I don't know, you can say it was a bless and maybe in some ways also a curse that, it happened in our homeland and by our ancestors. So I would love to see that, because these are the origins of all human civilizations. When these hunters and gatherers, Vic, they basically settled down and they had these first, agricultural communities, and then domestication of different animals and also crops began some, around 12,000 years ago.
You know what's interesting about your answer, Gevork, is Göbekli Tepe, or Portasar, as we call it, has been an enormous hot topic amongst people who study like those ancient alien conspiracy or whatever you want to consider it. These topics, it's involved in so many different things. And it's for a while how they talked about Stonehenge. This now has kind of trumped Stonehenge.
Yeah.
This
trumped a lot of things.
No, this has taken over Stonehenge. Like people don't even talk about Stonehenge anymore. Göbekli Tepe has become this new,
Mike, you're absolutely right, and I think the reason is because the for the time being, 12,000 years ago, the structure itself, the circular temple, is so advanced and unbelievable that you can have so-called primitive hunters and gatherers build something like the Porta
Stonehenge looks like child's play.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is thousands of years before Stonehenge.
Yes.
This is thousands and thousands of years before Stonehenge. I mean, it's so mind-boggling that people say, the human beings back then couldn't just build something like this. No. It had to be aliens,
That's why I mentioned these ancient aliens,
right.
They were called Armenians.
Right. And like for the pyramids, you probably heard sometimes for the pyramids, similar argument is made because it's so advanced and it's so like perfect having this pyramid. And for it to think that, human labor back then could do something like this.
Yeah.
But Portasar is more fascinating because guess what? It's like 6, 7, 8,000 years before the pyramids.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like when Portasar was built, nothing even comes close to in terms of its complex
complexity.
Structure. Again, with the carvings, you have even like perfect drilled holes on the slabs. I mean, how was that done? What tools did they use to make that? Yeah. Or those carvings? Or again, how did they, pull those huge multi-ton, stone slabs and put them one on top of each other?
And I mean, the connection points between the stones are nearly one millionth of an inch or something like this. Yeah. It's insane how precise they were cut.
Yeah.
If you really examine.
One day, hopefully, some amazing, smart Armenian man or woman will come up with the time machine, and it would only be for us to go back and see it.
Yeah.
Just kidding. But Gevork, thank you so much for joining us and doing this. We've learned so much about Andranik. I hope our audience learned something about great Andranik Pasha. He was an amazing man. He did so much for Armenia, for Western Armenia, for East, and just overall being a uniter. That was the key thing. It wasn't about political parties. ARF or Hunchak, that doesn't matter. He did so much, and
he had an overarching mission.
Yeah. So I don't know. We have, there's another. We're going to talk about other thing, but I'm a big fan of Najde, so I think next time we should
coming soon.
We're going to be talking about Najde, and but. Having said that, anything you want to mention? Any important projects or anything that's going on in your life?
Well, like I said, like I'll keep you guys posted as we go along. But I'm working on some projects, but since haven't finished them off, so I would let you know about them once I complete them.
It's premature right now.
Exactly.
Got it.
Kind of like you guys did, keep it a surprise. Then
it wasn't easy.
Make sure you announce it.
It wasn't easy.
Make sure you announce it on our show. No one else's.
Absolutely.
All right, Gevork John. But again, thank you so much joining us live from Yerevan. We appreciate it. You take care, and we'll talk to you later on this week. We have so much more stuff coming up, so and we'll see you soon.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Soon.
Bye. John.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
All right, well, that was great.
Yeah,
I love having Gevork on because it's such a, you learn so much, and the way he tells the stories of these people or events, whatever subject we're talking about, he covers it so well that, I mean, at that point, even the questions don't matter because
it doesn't.
He's just perfectly.
If anything, he messes our questions up.
Yeah, I know. So why do we even come up with questions?
It's awesome.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
As always.
We revealed our, fifth sculpture again. Andranik Pasha, he is, go to our website, again, medherosner.com, pre-order it. Again, this is going to be limited. We're going to be selling these in limited amounts because we realize that it takes a lot of time to make these. Each piece takes about 3 to 5 days to produce and
after it gets to production.
Yeah. So it takes time. So be patient. If you are pre-ordering, please be patient. I know a lot of people contact us. When is it coming? When are we going to get the sculpture? Again, if we're doing 25 releases at a time, each one, we're trying to make this as fast as possible. But at the end result, you've seen it. Those of you who have ordered the Tigran, the Vartan, you've seen it, how the quality of it, the beauty of it. So
also we're all globally dealing with some supply chain issues.
Yeah. Well,
so there's that sometimes we run into, but we're doing our best.
Yeah, and Ashken's going to be coming soon. That's it's ready to go for production as well. I know a lot of people who ordered are patiently waiting. So again, thank you everybody. Support the show. Make sure you go to patreon.com/medherosner to become a patron. Support us. And then I want to mention next week we'll have Ara Papian live with us. And again, we mentioned Gevork even. We'll be talking about Woodrow Wilson, the Wilsonian map, and everything that happened during that time. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please smash that notification bell so that way you are notified every time we go live.
Yeah.
But anything else?
No, just keeping out for more artwork. I know we've put out quite a bit over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
We have more coming. I should say you have more coming. I'm just the promoter here.
Yeah, I've been a busy boy. I've been a busy boy.
But again, everyone, thank you for joining us live, and to all our podcast listeners who are supporting us, again, thank you so much. The downloads keep coming. We're excited. We have more content coming for you. So as we always say, respect one another, love one another, and till the next episode, take care of yourself.